A number of things, wow, it's so great to see Lynne Stewart free, and we can only hope that she has more time than the doctors allegedly gave her. It is a New Year's present to the revolutionary movement, really, and whenever we talk about the state and try to explain it to our friends, I think we should use her case as an example, because they're always pointing somewhere else. Some of you may have watched the news recently, see how the bourgeois news is giving Dennis Rodman a hard time, and grilling him and the other basketball players that he brought to the DPRK because of who they're allegedly holding and why, but not a word about Lynne Stewart and all the other political prisoners, Mumia and the rest of them. But anyway, free all political prisoners. I want to say a word on behalf of the party and homage to Amiria Baraka. I think most of you are familiar with him. He died yesterday, and Amiria was many things. He wore many hats as a political activist, a black revolutionary. He evolved politically from a revolutionary black nationalist to a Maoist/Marxist, and was a controversial figure in the black liberation movement, and lots of arguments and differences over the half a century that he's been on the scene. But this much is beyond dispute. There are a lot of wonderful African-American writers and poets and artists, some of whom are revolutionary or very progressive. Many of you may know them more than I do, know of them, be more well read of them. But I think no one surpasses, in terms of impact and notoriety, Amiria Baraka as a poet and a writer who used that art as a weapon in the black liberation struggle. He was more than that. But I think that, among other things, it was that quality that made him so famous and beloved in the black liberation struggle. And believe me, for the last 36 hours, and probably for quite some time, the passing of Amiria Baraka will be the big topic of discussion, and what to do, at this time, because these are political events. And I'm sure there are some who are planning some memorials that we will have, the party will take a lot of interest in and participate in and help as much as we can. And I'm sure that this will be reflected in the pages of our paper. A few of us got to know him over the past 15 years, primarily in relationship to work to free Mumia, because he was always a sort of a mainstay, doing what he can, speaking where he could, showing up where he could, on behalf of the struggle to free Mumia. We got to know him and his partner, Amina, and that was a very good personal experience for, I know, Monica and myself, and perhaps a number of other comrades in other branches. I had a surprisingly pleasant experience this morning in relationship to Baraka's death, and it's the way it should be. I was at a meeting in a union hall. A couple of us were there, Ann and Greg. I think Greg was there early enough to hear it. And this was a meeting called to brief a section of the movement on the critical situation of the airport workers, which I'll talk about in a minute. And he had unionists, and he had a couple of politicians and so forth, and ministers and whatever. Big meeting in their office. But he started the meeting by noting the death of Amiria Baraka. And it was just good to see that at a union meeting about a workers' struggle, that they bring it in there, because it's so often the case that they don't bring it in there. we're just concerned with this and the contract and, you know, legitimately all the issues that are on the table in terms of this struggle. But he brought in the Black Liberation Movement, the President Hector Figueroa of 32BJ SEIU. And, you know, I have no basis upon which to call him a revolutionary. I doubt whether that's true, but I think that, you know, in relationship to other labor leaders, certainly in this city, I think he has a somewhat different and more progressive history, you know, and it comes from the rank and file. And it was a surprise, you know, put a smile on your face that he would actually, we're thinking about the airport workers like we should be, but he raises Baraka, you know. And anyway, just to touch on a few things that are happening in our mass work. I don't know whether Comrade Sue did it in her excellent report on Veolia. Of course, in Boston, that struggle enters a new year, and the comrades and the union, the bus drivers, and more in the labor movement are preparing to ratchet up that struggle in the new year. And they have a Solidarity Day 2. Some of you remember Solidarity Day 1, in what was it, November 10th or something like that? You know, they have put out a Solidarity Day 2, which is February 1st. And we will probably be mobilizing in the city to go up there. And maybe, just maybe, that was great. I mean, for those of you who remember, it was terrific. You know, such a big percentage of the union turned out, a lot of progressive people around the Boston area. But the labor movement did, you know, it was anemic from the local labor movement. And this time, you know, that's always a struggle, because there's been a lot of red baiting and a lot of isolating, and, you know, it's one of the problems that our comrades in the union has in combating union busting. This red baiting and the isolation, even coming from their own international, of all places. However, there's a feeling that this time they have a leg up on that struggle to break out of the isolation within the labor movement in the Boston area and in New England. And we're helping them do that, especially Tony Murphy, you know, Sue Davis, a couple of other comrades, you know. So more on that next week probably. Also in Detroit, and I don't know whether, you know, any of the comrades have had the opportunity to see any of the videos that have been made available of the comrades fighting in court, you know, the banks and so forth. And I mean, our comrades, particularly Jerry, but the other comrades, are really at the center of the political struggle against the banks in this bankruptcy horror show. And they're just doing splendidly. And their next plan is to convene a workers' assembly in Detroit, among other things, to put forward their demands, but also to say that, you know, this assembly of workers should be the place where Detroit's future is decided, and where these decisions are decided about, you know, do we get our pension, or do the banks, you know, get cut and so forth, you know. And we're very excited about that. And, you know, as we get more information on that, we'll report that to you. This is also important, too, on a number of levels. In Baltimore, where we have already established a Baltimore Workers' Assembly, as of last September, I think, which is growing, and the comrades are recruiting comrades to the party through it. I went down to a party meeting there, and the room was packed. The room was packed. This was a party meeting. The room was packed. It was incredible, you know. A lot of that is based on the work they're doing with low-wage workers through the Baltimore Workers' Assembly. They are playing, believe it or not, the principal role, with some assistance from other unions, in defending workers at Baltimore Washington International Airport who work for a Veolia outfit, who drive, you know, the shuttle buses, you know, for the, you know, plane passengers, you know, who are trying to organize a union, some of whom have been fired, you know, most of whom are West African, And they're also getting into the struggle of other low-wage workers who are all over the place in many industries, not just Wendy's and McDonald's and Walmart's. They're establishing quite a niche or an imprint in the struggle there, in the workers' struggle. They're having a regional workers' assembly in the middle of February, on February 15th, which roughly would mark the 3rd anniversary of the occupation of the capital of Wisconsin and Madison, against the austerity and the union busting, and they put that on their very wonderful literature that we help them with here. And they're trying to get the comrades from the South and also union contacts and low-wage workers from the South, as well as the Mid-Atlantic. And they're hoping that some people can come not only from New York, but also and Philly and so forth, but also from Boston. Now there's a connection, Veolia over there and Veolia in Boston. One of the reasons why this February 15th Regional Workers Assembly in Baltimore is important is because, again, what's coming up in the spring, May Day. And for the last 6 or 7 years, thanks to mostly the rebellion of migrant workers, and to some extent also our good militant, sisters and brothers in Million Worker March, who did something a few years earlier. Wasn't as big, but definitely had a political impact. Now May Day is really a workers' day, more and more so. And those in the workers' movement, who are, whether they be in organized labor or outside, who are focusing on organizing low-wage workers, wherever they may be, and they are objectively, they're the left of the workers' movement, They are focusing on May Day 2014. How can we make May Day a day that's important to this struggle? And there are discussions about making another attempt to have a broader workers' strike. Now, we know these workers' strikes, are symbolic in terms of their participation. Only a fraction of the workers are in a position to participate. But on a national level, that could be thousands, if not tens of thousands of workers. And one of the things that they're doing is they're bringing back the whole question of a strike as a weapon of the working class. And as far as we're concerned, at this point, it's not all that important that the strikes in terms of their participation are symbolic. You have to start somewhere. What's happening now is that if you talk about having a general strike or a strike that's national, no longer are you considered crazy or, this is ultra-leftist, or why are you saying that? Because it's being brought back. And it's very, very important. And imagine if that is another part of May Day 2014. And there's a good chance that it may be. But comrades, we have a role to play in that. Both promoting it, propagandizing for it, politicizing for it, arguing for it, and also in some instances concretely organizing for it. And that Regional Workers Assembly in Baltimore is going to be a big part of the planning for that. It's really going to be national in some ways. And now New York, the final part of my comment. In the PPA, which is doing very well, our meetings are very strong, weekly meetings. We had been considering for a few weeks what we would do with the Martin Luther King holiday. Holidays on the third Monday in January. That's January 20th in 2014. And we had decided a little while back that we would sort of do a repeat of what we did on October 24th, the anniversary of the first minimum wage, find some place and, have a street demonstration, rally, around the rights of workers, $15 an hour in a union, and maybe, do what we did in some of the restaurants and stores, send flash mobs in there to be in solidarity with the workers, which is not only a lot of fun, but really lifts the workers' spirits, really does it, And we had also decided, based on information that we had gotten a little while ago, and really, this should be something that's known throughout the progressive and working class movement. I'm afraid it's not, but hopefully in the coming days, that situation will change. That one of the biggest organizing drives taking place in this area is the airport workers, who are, by and large, low-wage, non-unionized workers. Something has happened. It's sort of a combination of two things. That's really the one thing. It's globalization, intensification of capitalist exploitation and oppression. In the late 1970s, under Carter, under a Democrat, the airports were deregulated. It was a whole part of deregulation. And one of the parts of that was that the airlines and whoever was, and all of those who operated businesses in the airports would get a pass on certain federal laws, like minimum wage, like having to observe federal holidays and either, give the workers a paid holiday or give them, holiday pay if they worked. This, on top of the fact that there's been a fiendish kind of, it's not privatization because they're already privatized, but what a lot of the airlines have done, especially in the last 15 years, is that whatever work they could fire workers, many of whom were unionized workers, and contract out to a non-union, low-wage, buzzard capitalist exploiter like a Veolia. They've done it en masse. And so you find that, there are hundreds of thousands of workers who work, in the airports all around the country. I think the comrades know a little bit about the struggle at SeaTac, which is short for Seattle, Tacoma, and that was the whole basis of why that city was able to have a referendum and vote in a $15 minimum wage that the airlines immediately went to court to enjoin. So that's why I don't think the workers are enjoying it yet. So SEIU, in addition to its other endeavors in terms of organizing low-wage workers, is, I think, more so even than with fast food workers or workers in the big retailers. They're more directly involved around the country in organizing these low-wage airport workers. And in New York's 3 airports, LaGuardia, Kennedy, and Newark, there are between 12 and 15,000 of these workers who are employed by any number of contractors. And, they're doing it's not just the food concessions, the fast food concessions, that some of the unions have done a little work, not enough work in some of the airports. These workers are doing stuff that airline mechanics and maintenance people used to do. They're packing and unloading bags from airliners. They're doing maintenance work. They're cleaning up the area, in the airport. Chances are, 10, 15 years ago, this was an employee of, United or Alaska Airline that most likely was in a union. Now it's some worker working for somebody that the airline is contracting, and they're getting $8 an hour. There were a number of them who spoke at the meeting this morning and explained it, and explained how, they had no sick days, no vacation, and how some of them, they open their mouth and complain and they get fired. So, this is an intense organizing campaign, mostly black and brown people, a lot of migrants, women, same people whose faces you see basically, behind the counter at some of these fast food establishments or in Walmarts. It's a big deal. And SEIU and its supporters have been trying to organize the workers at the New York three big airports for 2 years. And the impression they gave us this morning was that they haven't been able, while they've gotten a lot of support amongst the workers and their meetings are very big, they haven't been able to get much from management. What they're turning toward now, it seems, is that, I mean, they're dealing with each contractor. It's the way it is. That's how they atomize workers. You know, you have now you can't just go to one big employer. You got to go to, you know, who knows how many contractors, including Veolia, who's out there at LaGuardia. They run some of the shuttle operations. You know, they're one of the notorious low-wage contractors. You know, they want to now open up a bigger struggle against the Port Authority. And the authority, the real authority behind the Port Authority are the governors of New York and New Jersey, but really the governor of New York, because New York is so much more powerful, you know, than New Jersey in relationship to the Port Authority. And it's an interesting problem for SEIU and the labor movement, because who's the governor? A Democrat, Como, you know, and one of the reasons why they have vacillated is because they were weary of getting into an open struggle with the Democratic governor. But it seems as though, you know, the situation now is so dire, the need to make progress is so important that they may have no choice but to open up the struggle against the Port Authority and the governor. To help their struggle, they came up with what seems to me to be a pretty good idea, and that is this. As I said before, because of the deregulation, these contractors do not have to give their workers federal holidays. And by and large, they don't. And so what the workers did about 20 days ago, I think it was around December 19th or December 20th, they had a big demonstration in front of the Port Authority offices, which is not far from Union Square, where they delivered petitions from thousands of workers from all three airports, demanding that the Port Authority tell all of its contractors they're responsible for them. They're the ones who gave them the license to work at these airports. You tell them that they have to give us Martin Luther King holiday with pay. And, you know, they go into, you know, King's record with the unions and where he was when he was assassinated in Memphis, you know, fighting for the, and with the sanitation workers and his labor history and so forth, and how important he is to SEIU. What they have said is that if the Port Authority does not do this by January 20th, well, they are going to find their own way to celebrate, you know, the Martin Luther King holiday. We have been wondering what that would be. We got a little idea of it today. Actually, what the PPA had initially planned to do, up until today, actually, up until this morning, based on new information, we changed it, is that we were going to call on people to assemble in Union Square. We were going to have a little event there, like 34th Street. We were going to target some of the fast food restaurants and Dwayne Reed and whatever, you know. And then we were going to make our way around Union Square Park, one block north to 18th Street and Park Avenue, because that is the location of the headquarters of the Port Authority. It's on 18th Street and Park Avenue. We're going to do that, you know, sometime late in the afternoon of Monday, January 20th. But that scenario has changed. Why? Because the workers are meeting. The impression I got from talking to the president, Hector Figueroa, a little bit after the meeting, is that the workers were meeting this afternoon, and they were going to decide what they were going to do and where they were going to do it. And it's a big issue, you can imagine. They don't have a union. They're not recognized by their bosses. You know, so that means that, you know, they're more at risk. You're at risk even if you're in a union. Look at look at Boston. But they don't have a union. They have nothing. You know, as far as their contractors are concerned, they have no rights whatsoever. They're slaves, wage slaves, in every sense of the word. So, whatever they do, it requires a tremendous amount of courage. I mean, these workers, they're the ones who literally live check to check, But they were going to meet and decide what to do. And what they want to do is walk out of their jobs. They want to walk off their jobs. And they're going to do this at LaGuardia. We're not sure what's happening at Newark and Kennedy, but they're definitely doing it at LaGuardia. LaGuardia seems to be the center for January 20th. And so they have asked us, instead of doing what we were going to do in Union Square, which we could do at another time, they're asking us and everyone else to come out to LaGuardia on Monday morning, January 20th at 11:30, and we're going to have a rally. I guess it's as close as you're able to get to LaGuardia. For those who know Queens, Ditmars Boulevard and 94th Street. I hope it's near public transportation. I think you can get there. Yeah, right, And the workers are going to come, they're going to walk off, and they're going to join us. So that is what we will be participating in on Monday, January 20th. It's very, very important. Very, very important. And they did warn us that, there may be direct action and arrests may be involved. And so at some point, over the next few days, we will, have to figure that out, and, who amongst us and amongst the people who work with the PPA will be willing to participate in that. One thing that we can do too, and we talked about this, both in the PPA fraction as well as the general meeting we had on Wednesday, is that whatever we're able to do or not do on Monday, and we'll try to get as many people there as possible, with some nice signs and so forth, and also to tell people what our next event is going to be, because since we're not doing anything in the city, we'll do something in the city. It'll just have to be, maybe the following week or whenever we think is the right time to do it. And we'll have that information on January 20th. But what we can do, and this is not unimportant at all, is get the word around to the working class and to progressive people that there is this struggle to unionize these workers. I don't think it's well known. You're certainly not reading about it in the New York Times. It's not in New York One or CNN unless I missed it. The only article I've seen about it is, some of the web services have articles like the Huffington Post, and there are a couple of articles in the Amsterdam News. But this needs to get out. And actually, I'll just conclude on this. There are many things that the PPA can do, that a workers' assembly can do. Many, many things. Including, getting involved in organizing workers where that's a practical possibility based on our strength and circumstances, and in other cases, supporting them, But simply bringing the word of these important struggles for our class to a broader section of the public who has no way of knowing about them, because the enemy class isn't going to spread this. And unfortunately, all too often, the unions are so narrow-minded and, conservative in the way they do things, even the good ones, that they don't think how to maximize, broader support from the working class. Sometimes they do, but more often they do not. One of the roles of a people's assembly or a workers' assembly is to find ways of maximizing information and turning that into practical solidarity with workers' struggles. And this is precisely what the PPA is going to do on January 20th. Victory to the airport workers. It's another lesson, too, for those who think that low-wage workers are just Pizza Hut and Domino's and Wendy's. That's true, and Walmarts and stuff. They're everywhere. More and more, they're everywhere and everybody. Thank you.